It's funny, every 1 year, 5 years, 10 years or so, it presents a great opportunity to count, to add it up, to run the numbers, right? Whether it's how many books have you read in the last 1, 3, 5, 10 years, how many times have you been to the gym? How many times have you told that long lost relative, I love you? When was the last time you wrote a letter to an old friend, right? Or reached out? How many times have you done those things to continually make deposits into the relationships that you want to see grow? Sometimes we're taking account of the level of investment we've made in our personal growth, right? How many times did I walk around the block this week? How many days did I eat an apple? Because they say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. How many times have I purchased some sort of information or materials that might help strengthen me or might help me get to where I want to go? Well, what we find is it's a great time to run those numbers and tally up what you find. And one of the amazing things I realized not that long ago was I started to count what level of investment that I had made in my personal development. Now, this might easily seem like a question you just quickly ask and say, all right, let me just go log into Sallie Mae and see, what do I owe left on my school loans? And look at whatever that number is, plus what you paid into or whatever the original loan amount was, and you figure, yeah, that's what I've spent on my education. But I don't mean formal education. I mean like all of it. The formal education, the self-education, right? Any education that's designed to make you better. I mean, I would even count, personal counseling or therapy, investments that you made to make you a better you. Take a moment. Try to think of that number in the last year, maybe the last 5 years. How about the last 10 years? Since 2010, how often have you bought a book, made a purchase, invested in a course that might help you, right? That's crazy to think about, because I know some people that haven't picked up a book since high school, and they've stated it with pride, like, hey, I haven't read the last time I read a book was high school when I graduated. I'm like, wow. We're in our 30s now. We're older than that now. So, 20 years have gone by with no growth. The old saying, if we're not growing, we're dying. So it gives you something to think about, right? It gives you something to think about as far as the level of investment that we've made into ourselves. And I started to think about the investment that I've made in myself, not just in my formal education, but also my self-education. And I kid you not, the results were startling. Here's what I came up with. Okay, so let's see what we got here. These data points are actually going to be really interesting because they're a couple of years old, and part of why I'm doing this is to get, I'm going to run an exercise and get fresh, up to date, really just to track this stuff, right? Because it's a journey, and you want to be able to understand the progress you're making on the journey and what all that looks like. So it looks like, for my, what would be categorized as formal education, that would be essentially like college, right? So that totals out to be 17,000, looks like a little over 17,700. Yeah, so under 20 grand to go to school. Yeah, sounds like a year's worth of tuition or a semester in some schools nowadays. Time flies, doesn't it? But that was the price and cost and what was paid. So a couple of years ago, I look and ran a calculation on the investments that were made in self-education, business development, growth, real estate, different types of asset classes, investing, trading, all the above. That running total was north of 6 figures as of a couple of years ago. And that's when it became very eye-opening that some of the differences that you recognize in the choices that you make and the opportunities you pursue are only possible because of these investments that you've made. It's like, you can learn how to see better gradually over time just by sticking around long enough and continually observing and putting the pieces together. Or there's instances where you can essentially acquire a fast pass to acquire certain knowledge at an accelerated rate, at a concentrated rate. And specifically, if it's right there in alignment with what you're trying to do, what's a part of your plan right now, then it's going to have this magnitude effect, and really just be like hitting the nitro button if you take action and implement and stay consistent. And so that's what I've come to see, is that really it's like what Jim Rohn said. He said formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. And in a lot of instances, I see that's definitely true. I mean, I think of, some business deals that you might coordinate or engineer a whole transaction that's just a win for all parties involved and is a good thing for every participant. But if you didn't have some of that underlying foundational understanding, if you didn't have the base level education to recognize the opportunity to begin with, let alone negotiate it and be able to see what success looks like, the successful plan to enter and exit that opportunity, then there's just not even it's not even a conversation you ever actually have. If you're consistently having that outlook, that attitude that you are pushing forward and that you are headed to a place that's going to be in alignment with your core values and that vision that you put together for yourself, that's when you really start to win. And it's tough to explain that. It's like trying to teach somebody how to swim over the phone. You really want them to be there and get it. And that's why I try and share these examples and stories of seeing how, why would someone tell the world that they have spent a bunch of money on trying to be smart? That's not even it in the least bit. But what there has become evident is that there's a direct correlation in some of the opportunities that present themselves to those that continually go down the path of self-education, personal growth and development, and they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, right? And then put the action after the money, because anyone can go pay for a high dollar course and not do anything with it. That doesn't really make you super powered. It's putting in the work and implementing the things that you learn and that access to knowledge, so that you've got the application of the information to really drive that movement towards your destination. So I talk about that and I think about that. And I think it's one of those things that people should really look at, how they evaluate an area of their life, right? Like, how are you doing in the area of investing in yourself, right? Trying to make yourself a better person, right? You're trying to learn how to love better, how to treat people better, maybe how to speak faster, speak slower, speak nicer to people. What's your thing? So this was just essentially an expression of that, and saying how powerful that epiphany has been for me to recognize that it's true what they say. Formal education to make a living, self-education to make you a fortune. I encourage everybody to keep going out there and investing in their self-education, because you can do this in ways that it's just so much more satisfying than looking at it as a way to attain financial benefit. There are scores of wealth buried in some of the super basic elements of nutrition, if adhered to, can really help you move mountains as far as any obstacles in your world. So the list goes on, and it just has to do with really having that awareness of self, that you can leverage your own experiences to help highlight and identify opportunities for growth in your life. Because, okay, you graduate 12th grade and, there's a 13th grade and a 14th grade, if you want to count those first few years of college. But I mean, there's not like a 52nd grade. There's not necessarily a structure for that. You get your degree, you get your master's, you get your doctorate, right? You go double major, you get a couple of them, you get some other higher certifications, again, but within a formalized structure, there are limits to how high you can climb, where in the arena of self-education, you are literally limitless to the number of things that you can educate yourself about and equip yourself with as far as the tools that you need to succeed. And so that's just one of those eye-opening moments that I personally got introduced. It did have to do with financial pursuits. But what I've come to learn, more importantly, is over time that it's so much more than that, right? Learning how to get better sleep, learning how to get, just a better experience out of life. When you talk about the relationships that you have with people, the health that you have on a daily, ongoing basis, it's super powerful. So, if you're not on any sort of regular educate yourself program, I highly recommend you get on one. Take a hobby and look to learn a little bit more about that hobby, just if nothing else to rekindle the old memories about how you used to have fun with that hobby. Or if you've maybe got a side hustle or entrepreneurial interest that you've always looked at, see if there's some information that you can't get your hands on that's relevant to what might interest you, and be something you can start toying with and be productive with some of the open or free time that you may have an opportunity to use a little bit more productively. So with that, I just wanted to share those thoughts about that concept of self-education and continuing education, so that you'd really be inspired to kind of give some thought to that, right? Is that one area that you've not challenge yourself? We all have things on our to-do list, and then a lot of people have had additional time indoors to repurpose their time. And we can do that through leisure. We can do that through introspection, reflection. There's a whole host of ways. But the question is, that self-education arena for me is something I look at that's just been ongoing for the past 10, 12 plus years. But I've been fortunate to have conversations with people this year where that's kind of a new thing for them. And that's exciting to me to see that, this is going to be rewarding for you way more than you can imagine in the short term. It's not just a way to pass the time. It's a way to transform your life. Right. So that's the plug that I've got for self-education and growth. Be sure to check this one out and share it with a friend whenever you're kind of having questions or doubting where your motivation level is. You just need to reframe things and look at it from a whole new perspective, and look at ways you can sharpen your pencil so you can write a better story. All right. Thanks again for listening. And as always, I appreciate you joining. This is your host, Drew Davis, signing off from Learn How to See Better.